Chapter 47:22. Jian Wushuang is full of black lines. Looking at the magnificent posture of the heavenly court, I am afraid that he really must have the intention to straighten the real Wuyang Laro nest. I am afraid that he is also weak. Don't think about it, you misunderstood. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly, and then said the whole thing in and out, and said it roughly. In the end, there was silence in the bowl of yang bottle, and then there was a burst of uncontrollable excitement. Great, Xiaoyu, you continue to maintain relationship with that little Emperor Laozi, and gain trust. When the three emperors recover, we will come and destroy the den of the real Wuyang Laroa directly. No, not very good. Jian Wushuang's mouth twitched. You don't have too much psychological pressure, Xiaoyu, just act as usual, brush some sense of existence, and leave the rest to us. It really saves the time and effort of Tianda. This old Wuyang man can't think of it anyway, we are by his side. Hush, mute, we must not expose our breath next, everything will be decided by our friends. Little friend, you take care of yourself next, less than a last resort, of course, do not call us out as a last resort, we are good at recuperating. Jian Wushuang still wanted to talk, and the stopper of the yang bottle was closed directly, giving no chance at all. He smiled bitterly. At this moment, Chen Qing's voice rang from outside Yulong. Brother Sword, we should get off. Jian Wushuang responded, and then took out Qiu with Chuanqiu. Stepping on this vast cloud, Chen Qing took the lead and smirked. Brother Sword, how do you feel? Looking around, Jian Wushuang nodded, it's pretty good. Along with their conversation, a statue of Zun riding a fairy crane, or a sword, or riding a chariot, gathered in front of this heavenly gate. From a broad perspective, all of them are without exception. In the vast clouds of Yuyun, countless colorful lotus peaks and rainbows intersect each other, and the 9 vast expanse to the center of the boundless heavens span a supreme avenue paved by Yuyun. Almost 100 figures have gathered outside the Tianmen. Under the guidance of the thin purple robe, the little emperor wearing a blood-stained dynasty dress slowly paced down the imperial court. More than 100 Yangxian who were also waiting here, after seeing this somewhat embarrassed little emperor, looked at each other one by one, and then they all reluctantly bowed their hands, see the little emperor. Without looking at the perfunctory Yangxian, Xiao Dijun's footsteps moved towards Jian Wushuang slightly. Brother Jian, follow me along. Jian Wushuang nodded and looked around again, then stood behind the little emperor. There were only 6 Yangxian left, and 1 ancestor followed him, even the ceremonies were gone. Looking at Xiao Emperor's slightly embarrassed figure, the hundreds of Yangxian are all meaningful and different. The gatekeepers were guarded by dozens of Yangxian dressed in silver helmets. When the first 2 Yangxian's axe and fork crossed, they stepped forward and arched the hand. I have seen the little emperor, the emperor has a command, the time has not arrived, it must not. The speech was not finished yet. The brave little emperor suddenly raised his leg without warning, and directly flew the 2 Yangxian kicks out. Get away from me, Xiao Dijun said sullenly, and then strode into the heavenly gate. No one dared to stop him. The 2 Yangxian who had been kicked were grey-faced, standing awkwardly. Jian Wushuang waved the axe and the scattered axe to the 2, and then paced to follow the little emperor and stepped on the supreme avenue together. And the figure waiting outside the Tianmen began to whisper. One of the elders with crane hair and eyebrows, holding a whisk, snorted, increasingly flying. In my opinion, after this banquet, the position of the little emperor should be the prince. Fujiu is not afraid that the wind will flash his tongue. If you say this to the ears of the little emperor, it is estimated that the heaven will not be able to be beaten with 2 swords. One of the middle-aged men with extraordinary charm seemed not to deal with this elder with a long hair, and responded with a sneer. The elder named Fu Jie's face changed slightly, it seemed that he thought back to something, stopped talking, and closed his eyes to meditate. At this moment, another Yusha gathered in front of this heavenly gate. On top of these imperial dragons, they are marked with different fonts. Before the first 10 imperial guards, the correct flag was hunting in the wind. Immediately afterwards, a figure dressed in a plain white kimono stepped out of the imperial court. A group of Yangxian who stood on their own saw this, and hurriedly stepped forward and arched their hands. I have seen a Gongzi. The young man dressed in a Su dynasty dress, a rich and handsome young man, saw the imperial guard with the flag of Yang parked aside, his brows flickering slightly, and then he looked at the Yangxian who came to greet and smiled slightly. The Xian family, with the correction of the sun, went to heaven. Promise. A group of Yangxian promised, with a smile on his face. As the sons stepped into the heavens, dozens of imperial dragons came together again. In front of these imperial dragons, all have their own words. Yu, Qian, Mo, Hua, Lin. Not all. Wearing a kimono and slowly getting off the car, their faces are different, and after a smile, they step into the heaven with their respective companions. Walking in this supreme avenue, Jian Wushuang felt that the diffractive force in his body was renewed and transformed at a speed that he could feel. At the same time, the voice of the supreme prestige, like Hongzhong Die Lu, resounded throughout this heaven. The heavenly court opens, all fairy families, please sit down one after another. Jian Wushuang looked up to see the front of the sample. At the front of the supreme avenue was the magnificent heaven. Since the Emperor Xiao woke up, his complexion was somber, and his anger was more condensed as if it were substance. It seems that this time he went not to a banquet, but to fight. On the way here after the interception, the clothes of Jian Wushuang and others were somewhat damaged and blood-stained, and they looked full of anger. Walking forward without knowing the geometry of time, when the heavenly courtyard where the thousands of waterfalls fell appeared in front of everyone, a Hongqiao from the heavenly courtyard connected to the heaven, magnificent and magnificent. There are more than 100 people who lead the boys to come to Hongqiao with red lips and white teeth. No one would think that these boys are extremely powerful. Amy has seen Xiao Dijun. At first, a little girl flew straight into Xiao Dijun's arms and grinned. At this point, the hostility of the little emperor's body had converged. Little Amy, have you been lazy in spiritual practice in these years when I was away? His face was rare and he eased a lot, holding the little girl and walking slowly. The little girl tilted her head and said a little embarrassedly, Amy, it's a bit lazy. After all, the practice is very boring. You see I have lost a lot of hair for this. Chapter 47:23. The little emperor stretched his hand and scraped the bridge of the little girl's nose, and then stretched his hand towards the thin purple robe behind him. If you eat too much sweets, you may lose your teeth. The thin purple robe murmured, and then took out a handful of colorful sugar from her arms. The little emperor took out 2 of them, one into the little girl's mouth and one into his own mouth. The little girl smirked in the arms of the little emperor with her arms folded. Amy is not afraid of losing her teeth. Don't lie to you, my companion, they all say that I will not lose my teeth. The thin purple robe didn't talk much, but distributed the candy in hand to the rest of the leading boys in turn. Containing sweets, the little girl's big flashing eyes looked at Jian Wushuang curiously. Somehow, seeing the little girl's red lips and white teeth, Jian Wushuang inexplicably remembered the naive and the old brothers in the divine universe. Little Emperor, who is this big brother? Xiao Dijun turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang, then smiled, he is my good friend, you have to call him Brother Jian. Ah, Brother Jian. The little girl smiled sweetly at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang reported with a smile, subconsciously reached out and touched the small bun on her head. Little Emperor patted her lightly, go play, I'm going to meet the Emperor. The little girl nodded and said, Little Emperor, don't make Emperor angry this time. He was so angry after you went back last time. The little emperor did not speak, and reached out and carried it on the Hongqiao. After leaving the boy, his anger was quietly rising again, and his face was somber, and he was just like 2. Set foot on Hongqiao and walk into Tianting Tianmen in 1 step. There are also more than 10 Yangxian guarding the Tianmen. The 2 leading Yangxian, who were wearing gold armor, hurriedly and consciously gave way after seeing the deity, almost throwing the axe in their hands to the ground. The little emperor stepped directly into it, and Jian Wushuang and others followed. Buzz. Flowing clouds and water ripples spread between the world, feeling the warm and lush flowing around the body, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes. Between the entrances, countless towering mountains are entrenched here, and thousands of jade-like waterfalls are embedded in them, converging into huge rivers. And in the very center of this heavenly court, a vast expanse of sapphire giant hall is located in Yuyun, a round of a big day that exudes warmth and brilliance, reflecting behind it. Here, is it the heaven? Jian Wushuang looked at the magnificent momentum in front of him, and his heart moved. In front of the Sapphire Giant Hall, a road paved by Ruinyu has been paved to Tianmen. The little emperor first stepped on the Ruinyu Avenue and walked toward the front. After sighing in his heart, Jian Wushuang and others followed. Feeling the overflowing huamang, several people did not speak again and went straight to heaven. As he was about to step into the heavenly court, the ground covered by Ruinyu was condensed into two robes by the flowing clouds. Have seen the little emperor. The two Dao almost gave birth to a figure, and said to the little emperor, "Go away." Xiao Dijun blurted out the words directly, using yang force to shock the two, and stepped into the giant hall. The two twins had the same figure. It seemed to have been strange, and after being kind to the crowd, they reverted to drifting clouds. Walking into this sapphire giant hall and stepping into the vast square, Jian Wushuang only saw this, and hundreds of elders had already gathered at this time. Every old man is surrounded by a layer of warm and lush mansions, and it is difficult to observe its realm, but what is certain is that for every old man gathered here, realm practice is never under Chen Qing. Looking at the little emperor who was full of anger, the more than 100 old men all greeted, "I have seen the little emperor." Faced with these old men, the little emperor's face eased a little, but he just said, "Go in." After that, Bento went straight to the hall. A look of helplessness appeared on the faces of the elders. This time the banquet was afraid that it would be difficult to end. Enter the hall of this majestic view, and on the side of the throne on the other side, the little emperor sat coldly. Immediately afterwards, a group of elders waiting in the square entered the giant hall in turn. No one spoke, all hands crossed in the sleeves. The old was watching the nose and the nose. As a bit of Yang Xian entered, the atmosphere in this vast hall was slightly subtle. Surrounded by the Yangxian, a young man dressed in white teeth and plain clothes, a rich and handsome young man, stepped into the hall. Face to face, Xiao Dijun's complexion grew more cloudy. Instead, the young man took the lead to break the silence, and said with a faint smile, "The second brother, the younger brother, has seen big brother." Jian Wushuang looked at him with a deep gaze, and there was a playful color in his eyes. It seems that the heart is feeling that the young man in the white suit looks subconsciously at Jian Wushuang, with some scrutiny in his eyes. At this moment, the little emperor walked slowly down from the position of the head of the throne, with a glorious glory. He stepped back slowly, his face unnatural. "Say, are you sent by you?" The little emperor's voice was cold and his eyes filled with anger. The young man corrected the corner of his mouth unconsciously. "Big brother, what are you talking about? Why can't I hear?" Before he finished talking, a powerful slap was drawn directly on the son's face, followed by another powerful kick, kicking it far away. Such a combination of skills is too fast. After a while, after the flashes of after-images, all the immortals reacted, and the two had already flew out of the hall. "Brother Sword, let's go to watch a good show together," Chen Qing said excitedly, directly pulling Jian Wushuang to the outside of the palace. I saw that on the corridor, the little emperor straddled on the son's body, stretched out his two slaps, and swooped with bows on both sides. The son's face also swelled at a rate visible to the naked eye. "Little emperor, don't want to fight again, emperor will come later." One of the old men with black hair and black beard had no choice but to dare to step forward. For a time, there were many voices of admonishment, but the little emperor seemed to not hear it, and he still slapped his palm and opened his bow. "Yongzi Yang, you're enough." The prince, knocked down to the ground, violently exclaimed. Just as he was about to try to resist, Chen Qing smirked and released Yang Li to firmly fix his arms. "Chen Qing, you want to be arrogant, fight between the emperors, why do you intervene?" Yang Xian, who was full of voice, scolded. Chen Qing glanced at him, and then disdainfully, "Lao Tzu gets involved. Do you have the ability to beat Lao Tzu? Are you arrogant, an old man with a bite? Have you practiced on the dog?" A Yang Xian, who was next to the son, snarled with anger. Chen Qing's face suddenly sighed, his eyes like a sword shot at him. Yang Xian, who wanted to scold again, immediately swallowed her throat, and shrank back. Chapter 47-24. For a time, there was only the anger that the son was unwilling, and the slap of the little emperor's bow. Nearly 200 old men in the heavenly court looked at this scene and shook their heads and sighed. This is not the first time about the emperor's flying and arrogance. It was a total of 5 feasts and 3 fights. However, although the emperor was very cryptic about this, he never stopped it, and even had no crimes or lessons. This also caused the participants to dare to speak out, fearing that the little emperor would be upset and give himself a sword for nothing. With Chen Qing as an accomplice, the little emperor let go of his hands and feet and slapped his face, and the son could only bear humiliation. As for the more than 10 yangxian brought by him, although his eyes moved, he did not dare to dissuade him. At this moment, a sigh of resounding sound. Gongxian, Mo wants to use this heaven as your 6-day realm. Is your heaven the place where you want to be? The same figure in a plain ceremonial dress stepped into this sapphire giant hall, which was quite a martial art among the eyebrows of the martial arts. The little emperor raised his head slowly when he heard the words, and looked at him with yawning eyes, and then let go of the young man under him, and walked slowly towards him. What are you going to do? The rather heroic young man stepped back half a step unconsciously, his eyes showing vigilance. It was a powerful slap in response to him. The Ingwu young man seemed to have expected that his neck would escape the blow a little, but then there was a sudden pain in his abdomen. I saw that Xiao Emperor, with an incredible speed, directly hit the top of his knee and hit his lower abdomen, forcing him to lose his resistance instantly, and at the same time the slap of the storm threw up. The young man stood up, covered his slightly bluish cheeks, looked angrily at the little emperor who was still violent, and then raised the palm of his raging rage. Second son, you have already done many secret attacks, this time, let's pause. Chen Qing sounded with a little sneer, and at the same time, a more prudent force was blocked in front of the sun. The sun corrected his gaze, and looked at Chen Qing's gaze with a sudden death. Chen Qing, what do you mean? It's not interesting, people are doing it, the sky is watching. Oh, I almost forgot, you two are already heaven. Chen Qing said with his arms behind his head. The killing in his eyes became heavier and heavier, but the prince just snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and retreated to the side, closing his eyes and raising his mind. Brother Jian, Chen Qing immediately leaned against Jian Wushuang, his face mysteriously said, guess who is Emperor Xiao? Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, is it his brother again? Chen Qing nodded, the third brother, Gongzi Yu. He smiled dumbly, would he want to draw several brothers one by one? I'm not sure, Chen Qing shrugged. But it is estimated that when the fourth is drawn, the emperor is coming. This brave young man named Gongziyu, with a slap in the face of the little emperor's storm, snarled hard with dozens of slaps and slammed into his face with his vigorous palm. But the space seemed to stagnate for a moment, and the little emperor slightly passed his head slightly, and then stepped back, and kicked the sun off with a kick. There was an uproar, and the companion brought by Gongziyu could not help but take a step forward and whispered, you are a prince, why are you the second son, and the 3 sons are embarrassed in this heavenly court? Are you arrogant? Little emperor glanced at him coldly, and in his hand quietly appeared a real sword with immortal air. Seeing that, the companion wearing a purple robe stepped back and gritted his teeth, saying, heaven cannot be stained with blood. At this moment, there were 4 other bodies dressed in tooth-white suits, all walking into the sapphire giant hall. But after seeing this scene, the 4 figures took a half step back in tacit understanding and looked at the little emperor alertly. Come here. Little emperor withdrew the real sword and waved at several people. One of the slightly younger people responded quietly, brother, don't come unharmed. The atmosphere was heavy, and all Yangxian stared at this impending battle square. The little emperor sneered, and a soft sword was wiped from his waist without traces on his palms. The face of the 5 people changed slightly, and one of the thin young men stepped forward. Brother, stop, don't make the emperor unhappy anymore. He turned a deaf ear and raised his sword step by step, revealing his murderous intentions from his eyes. At this time, Chen Qing's complexion also changed subtly. Brother sword, Xiao Dijuan seems to have really killed himself this time, so I will step forward and stop. Jian Wushuang nodded, this magnificent heavenly court, if it was really stained with blood, I am afraid that the emperor who has not yet appeared will never forgive the little emperor. The young man covering his cheek aside with a happy face, the look in his eyes, I wish they could fight on the spot. A total of 5 magnificent powers filled the square in this sapphire giant hall for a moment. Every son in a kimono is ready for a battle. The little emperor didn't seem to worry at all. He carried the soft sword in his hand and moved forward as if he had entered the unmanned state. Just as Jian Wushuang and Chen Qing were about to step forward to stop the sky that was originally lingering in the clouds, I do not know when there will be a brilliant Chinese rhyme. At this moment, the entire cloud-filled sky dome changed. Jian Wushuang seemed to realize what he was looking at. I saw a black robe formed by a gathering and scattered cloud. He stepped on the colorful rhythm and walked down the sky, shockingly, as if there were rules of the avenue flowing around him. Is this the true Wuyang Emperor? Jian Wushuang murmured in his heart, somewhat shocked by his general trend. With a palm of your hand, the battle between the little emperor and others was directly suppressed, and the strength was dissipated. Even Jian Wushuang clearly felt that the strength of the body was suppressed. The black robe has its foot in the center of the square. It looks like a sculpture. The faces of the 5 people all changed, and then they shook hands at the same time. Have seen you, Bo. Little emperor did not speak, reached out and placed the soft sword around his waist, then said quietly, "You, Bo." The black robe fluttered slightly, a pair of turbid eyes slowly swept around, and finally looked at him. "Little emperor, don't be angry anymore, the emperor will arrive later." As the voice fell, it was another voice that seemed to permeate through the ages, carrying the supreme majesty, resounding, "Are you kissing?" All Yangxian who gathered in the heavenly court heard this voice, and they all sang their hands and said, "I have seen the emperor." The heavenly dome with dim colorful colors dimmed sideways, and a majestic figure dressed in the costume of the emperor of the mountain and river emerged. Behind him, there are 99 figures. Chapter 47-25. Every body shape is full of magnificence, and the light wheels of different colors condensed by Yang Li shine on the entire heaven. It made the majestic figure in the emperor's clothes look a little sad. But any Yangxian who can come to this heavenly court is by no means so stupid. The dignified figure capable of ascending to the throne and destroying dozens of emperors by his own power is hundreds of millions of times more terrifying than he revealed. Looking at the mighty emperor who stepped on the sky, Jian Wushuang finally saw the true face. For a time, in the vast square of this giant palace, the atmosphere was extremely tense. The question with anger is obviously from the emperor's mouth. The little emperor looked up at the Emperor Wei standing at the top of the cloud, and said quietly, "Go back to the emperor, and the sun will not dare." "Then what were you doing just now? Do you want to stain the heavens?" Another question was issued with a question. Immediately afterwards, the Emperor Zhenwu Yang came to Haohan Square with endless momentum. "They are all your siblings. As a prince, not only did you not lead by example, but you have lost your identity again and again. Why should I dare not deal with you?" Little Emperor did not say a word, and there was no fear in his lowered eyelids. At that moment, the figure of Yu Bo's black robe slowly came to Emperor Zhenwu Yang and whispered, "Emperor and little emperor have not made a big mistake, it is not unforgivable. After the banquet, dispose again." The body of Wei glanced at the little emperor, and then to Yu Bo. There was helpless flashes in his eyes. "Well, let's have a feast first." At the end of the speech, he took the lead into the main hall, and then followed 99 old men carrying all kinds of huamang, followed with a smile. "Good." Hundreds of Yangxian promised in unison. The sun stared at Chen Qing and others fiercely, and then strode into the main hall. This farce finally ended with the presence of Emperor Zhenwu Yang. Xiao Dijun gave them a deep look, and then came to Jian Wushuang and others. He seemed tired, grinning reluctantly. "Come on, the feast is about to begin." "Little emperor, did you hurt anything?" Chen Qing was worried. He shook his head, then stepped into the hall under the guidance of a thin purple robe. Inside the main hall, the Emperor Zhenwu Yang sat on the throne. On his side, the gloomy little emperor sat on the side of the head. Yu Bo is like a black sculpture, standing behind the emperor. In the vast hall, the elders who carried the wheels of various colors sat side by side and sat down on the sides. Slightly down the first position is the sons in white kimonos. Under the instruction of Xiao Dijun, Jian Wushuang and the others sat down with the 6 sons, but they were clearly distinguished. Sitting in the misty clouds, Jian Wushuang looked at his nose with his eyes and his nose, but he didn't care about the scrutiny cast by the boys on the opposite side. Immediately afterwards, Chuanqiu, who was sitting next to him, lowered his voice and said, "Brother Jian, I really didn't expect that one day I could come to the heaven of Zhenwuyang. Don't do anything stupid." Jian Wushuang looked at him and smiled slightly. Chuanqiu nodded, "Relax, I know how important it is." In the low-pitched conversation from time to time, a fairy came from the cloud and presented a plate of precious fruits. Zhenwuyang sat on the throne, looked at this heavenly court with a smile, and then gave a more exaggerated emotion. From this emotion, Jian Wushuang also knew about this heavenly feast, and it has only been 5 times since its first opening. Held every other Chinese New Year. Jian Wushuang doesn't know exactly how long this year will be. According to preliminary estimates, it is likely that the time of the 10 galaxies will be broken. Time has long been the most meaningless thing here. After the achievement of Yangxian, Shouyuan is endless, except for the destruction of external forces. Even the so-called Mingming heavenly Tao may have little effect on Yangxian. After all, the creation of the avenue of heaven and earth, the ultimate order, is likely to come from the hand of a certain fairy. Those old men who have carried various rounds of light and have reached a level so high that even Chen Qing feels dazed, is to help Zhenwuyang to open up the heavens. The first veteran who boarded the emperor won the trust of Zhenwuyang, even if it is the seat of the 6 sons, not as good as them. It is an honor to be able to enter the heavenly court for the banquet, so even a humble immortal at the moment is in the heaven domain controlled by Zhenwuyang and belongs to the existence of the top. As the table in front of him was gradually filled with precious fruits, a beautiful fairy was also overwhelming. Chen Qing, who was sitting on the side of Jian Wushuang, had a pair of bright eyes attached to the fairy from beginning to end without leaving. "Guangxianzi, it's me. I don't remember me. I'm Chen Qing, who controls Jingchuan. Last time we were still talking in the Fengtai." Looking at the fairy who was leaning over and pouring wine, Chen Qing's eyes widened and talked. The fairy pouted, "I don't remember." "It doesn't matter if you remember, when the banquet is over, I'm still listening to the wind tower." "How are you?" Chen Qing grinned. The fairy smiled and returned without the answer, holding the jade pot. "There is a play," Chen Qing whispered, excited. Hearing the whole course of Jian Wushuang, he smiled slightly, picked up the glass of wine, and tasted it in a sip. As these fairies retreated, nearly 30 fairies came to the cloud, dancing in the center of the temple, and the sleeves transformed into a beautiful water sleeve. "Brother Sword, I think your age should be small, but there is a sweetheart. If not, brother, let me match you up." Chen Qing leaned up with a glass of wine and smiled faintly. "Farewell, you still have to worry about your own problems first. I already have a person in my heart, and I will never forget it." Jian Wushuang replied, his voice firm. Chen Qing heard the words and nodded his head. The sword brother's heart is firm. No wonder that such a mindset can reach Lin Yangxian. No answer, looking at the fairy with long sleeves and good dancing in front of him, and the slightly noisy sound around him, Jian Wushuang actually sat down. Chen Qing couldn't help crying and laughing. After Jian Wushuang and he Chuanqiu had a drink, he began to appreciate the dancing posture. Zhenwuyang was sitting on the emperor's seat, and looked at the little emperor sitting next to him from time to time. He seemed to want to say something to ease some atmosphere, but the little emperor seemed to feel nothing at all, just drinking one glass after another. In the end, Zhenwuyang couldn't hold back, leaning forward and whispering, "Yang, how have you been all these years?" Back to the emperor, "It was not bad." The little emperor said calmly, and then he disappeared. 6 days there is too far away. After this banquet, you come to live with me. Zhenwuyang asked him again. Chapter 47-26. Little Emperor's mouth twitched with a chuckle. "It's goodbye. I'm in the 6-day realm, and some Yangxian would be tempted to die earlier. If I follow him next to the emperor, I'm afraid it's even more uneven." Zhenwuyang heard the words, frowned, and then glanced into the palace with eyes full of oppressive authority, and finally stopped intentionally or unintentionally in front of the next 6 sons. "Yang, can there be evidence?" "Evidence? It's almost dead," Little Emperor said, holding a jade pot and drinking directly at the spout. Looking at the little emperor sitting so frivolously in the side capital, a glimmer of haze flashed in the eyes of Prince Gong, but then he covered up again. He couldn't understand that, except for Gongzi Yang, the other 6 sons are more suitable for being a prince, but why did the emperor choose such a waste that could not be practiced as a prince? A lot of supreme resources, he piled up from a waist to Yangxian, every drop of blood in his son's Yang meridian, almost all are the most top-level resources in heaven. Since the emperor did not want to do it, he would do it on his behalf and die a waste, which is far more than 10,000 times better than the entire Big Siu accompanied him to decline. At that time, even the emperor will consider him. A fierce sneer was unconsciously hung on the face, but the eyes cast by the little emperor struck him in the face. The son was stunned, and he quickly put away his expression and used drinking as a demonstration. The little emperor withdrew his disdainful gaze, and then unconsciously looked at the only guy who was somewhat maverick. In this heavenly immortal, fairy dance, this guy actually dived down to close his eyes and sit down, really a unique one. It's such a strange guy, don't you have any fun at all? Thinking of this, the little emperor squeezed a bit of diffusive force, and shot it on Chen Qing's body. Chen Qingxin understood that when he touched the sword Wushuang with his elbow, "Brother sword, wake up quickly, Chen please invite you to see something good." Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and looked helplessly at Chen Qing. Chen Qing smiled in a low voice, then opened his mouth to the fairy who was close at hand, and exhaled. Yanli turned into a strange wind, rising from the ground without any signs, actually blowing up the skirts of those fairies. For a time, the beautiful scenery lit up. What the screams rang out from the mouths of the fairies, and they were already in a mess, each hurriedly covering their skirts blown up by the strange wind. Seeing this situation, Jian Wushuang was speechless, and then shook his head. "Brother Chen, it's better to make less jokes." Chen Qing scratched his head and didn't wait to speak again. Then the young master who had noticed it suddenly slammed the case and angered, "Chen Qing, you are arrogant." There was silence in the heavenly court. After finishing this sentence, the son immediately confronted the emperor Zhen Wuyang and said, "Return to the emperor, Chen Qing blatantly wrecked the heavenly court and has no way to look. Punish. It's not me, I don't have it. Everyone didn't see the demon wind from where, why did you think it was me? It was clearly framed." Chen Qing got up and said angrily. Zhen Wuyang shook his head helplessly, then waved his hand, "Chen Qing, get out, without my summoning, you will not be allowed to go back to heaven again." Promise. Chen Qing was frustrated and promised, but when he turned around, he raised his eyebrows and glanced at young master. After this episode, the fairies who were forced to reveal the spring under their skirts jumped off again, all ran out of heaven. For a time, the first half of the banquet was over. Next, it was Zhen Wuyang's extremely exaggerated emotion. Since he could not sit down again, Jian Wushuang simply took a closer look at each of the Yangxian powers present. The elders with all kinds of light wheels, that is, the veterans who had fought with the Emperor Zhen Wuyang, were the first echelon. They had an almost profound extreme strength and a state that could not see the real, even Chen Qing had out of reach. Jian Wushuang can vaguely guess that they may have taken that step completely and reached another unknown and mysterious state. As for the second echelon, a group of Yangxian who are headed by Chen Qing are the peak of Yangxian, but they have never been able to break through. The sword Wushuang is in the middle of the second and third echelons. After all, ordinary Yangxian, even 4 or 5 Yangxian, can't effectively kill him. Even with Chen Qing, Jian Wushuang has the confidence to withdraw even if he loses. What will it be above the peak of Yangxian? Lord Zun, how could he exist? And what role does the master play? No one can give him the answer, everything can only be approached step by step. As the Emperor Zhen Wuyang's emotions came to an end, a message came into each Yangxian's ear with Yanli. "Driving the peach." Jian Wushuang murmured softly, and then looked at Zhen Wuyang Emperor somewhat puzzled. A jadeite fairy peach enveloped by thousands of Chinese rhymes appeared in the Emperor's hands. "You are still the same as before. This peach contains a great opportunity, which is the most indispensable part of breaking through Yangxian. If you win it, it will be of great benefit." At the moment, all Yangxian's faces showed an unstoppable joy. The most pinnacle of the feast, Duo Dao finally began. Those who are able to participate in this feast are not only the most powerful Yangxian strong men in this heaven, but ordinary treasures are already as difficult as their state of mind. Only by breaking through that arrogant state can they be attracted. This peach contains a great opportunity to break through. Once obtained, it is basically a foot out of the realm of immortality, but there is only one Xian Dao, and the participants have more than 300 Yangxian, and the competition will be extremely fierce. And there is a high probability that these Yangxian who are the runners are still eager to try. After all, even if they fail, the emperor will also give a very generous reward. The popular peach has always been the 6 sons of the emperor Zhenwu Yang, and only the son of Zhengwu won 2 fairy peach. This time, he also had a winning ticket. As for the little emperor, he has never participated in the battle to win the peach. Xian Dao landed on the ground, limited to 1 year, and found and held 10 days, the ultimate winner. Zhenwu Yang said the rules, between the palms overturned, the fruit of the rhythm of the Dao road through the Qianting Palace, fall into the entire heaven and earth. Gentlemen, please start. Emperor Zhenwu Yang said with a smile. Due to the rules, all Yangxian except the elders can participate, but the 6 sons can only bring 1 Yangxian into the market at most. The younger son took the lead to ask for help. Behind him stood a white-robe Yangxian, who took care of his companion since childhood. As the son asked for his life, Gongzi Yu, Gongzi Qian, and others also participated in the battle to win the peach. Chapter 47-27. The 6 sons were all dispatched. Although each of them had a warm smile on their faces, they were already undercurrent. This is the best time to perform, directly related to their status in the hearts of the Emperor Zhenwu Yang and the elders. In these several battles to win the peach, the prince has already become the existence of arrogant people, even those elders have already favored it, and it has the meaning of substituting for the little emperor. Therefore, every son-in-law has made great efforts to bring his realm to the top. After all, he can only get more attention when he comes to the end. Just as all Yangxian was ready to go to heaven, a lightly written voice sounded in the heavenly court, "Emperor, I will participate in this battle for the peach." Zhen Wuyang wrapped all Yangxian in this heavenly court for a moment, and then all looked at him. The little emperor slowly got up and swept the Yangxian. "Yanga, are you sure?" Zhen Wuyang also got up, a little happy in his eyes. "I've never participated in it all the time, so that some people have ignored the existence. This time, I just want them to distinguish between the primary and the secondary." The little emperor's voice was low and prestigious, and he looked at the next one without scruples. Zhong Yangxian. The 6 sons looked at each other in unison, and their faces were completely different. The son did not speak, but the palms in his sleeves were tightly held together. "Well, Yanga, I haven't seen your cultivation behavior for a long time. I can take advantage of this opportunity today." Zhen Wuyang smiled and waved his sleeve at the same time. "Come here," informed Chen Qing to I rolled in and asked him to accompany Yanga. "No emperor, I don't need Chen Qing this time," Xiao Dijuan said here, looking at Jian Wushuang. His eyes met, he said, "Brother Jian, can you follow me?" All Yangxian's eyes converged on Jian Wushuang's body again. Zhen Wuyang also looked at Jian Wushuang, the emperor's consciousness beyond his imagination, and he could easily see everything he wanted to know. Soon he was a little puzzled. This kid who was just a fairyland, in addition to his amazing talents, seemed to have a unique physique, even he couldn't see through it. At the same time, he has a feeling that he can't tell why. Although this young man's fairyland is not very deep, it seems inexplicably extremely comfortable, as if there is a certain level of association. Taking back the emperor's consciousness, Zhen Wuyang nodded, "Go on Yanga." For this grand dude, who always dislikes the mountains and dews, and is silent, once the matter is determined, even the emperor is difficult to change. Suddenly, Xiao Dijun came to Jian Wushuang and said slightly, "Let's go, it seems they shouldn't be able to wait." Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate too much. After nodding, he got up and walked outside the heavenly court. The thin purple robe suddenly grabbed Jian Wushuang's arm, and a pair of muddy eyes seemed to want to explain something, and finally only whispered, "Little emperor has given it to you." Xiaodijun stepped forward and patted the shoulder of thin purple robe, then walked out of heaven with Jian Wushuang. Luyun Shu Huan, Yang Li vast. Standing outside the court of heaven, all Yangxian scattered down like a panic, and the 6 sons also brought their own companions and fell to heaven. The battle for the peach that involved more than 300 Yangxian in total began. The Emperor Zhenwu Yang, who was sitting in the heavenly court, waved his hand, and the misty scroll made by Yanli was reflected in the hall. The scene in this picture is Huang Heavenly Realm. You guys, guess who will win the peach this time? Who will it be? Zhen Wuyang asked. It's the second son. A long-bearded old man, Fu Shu, smiled. Another old man in black robe refuted, the 4 sons are not weak. The 3 sons are the last candidates who can win Xiandao. If the old man is right, he already has a preliminary understanding of the fairy style. Hundreds of elders in the heavenly courts expressed their opinions, but in general, they pointed the candidates to the second son, the third son, and the 4 sons. Zhen Wuyang seems to have other answers. Looking down at the sculpture like Yu Bodao, Yu Chang, what do you think? Uncle Yu raised his head, and his murky, deep eyes seemed to pass through the flowing clouds, looking towards the heaven. The little guy next to Xiaodijun is extraordinary. So you also think he will win this fairy peach? The little emperor is calm and will not do things that are not sure. Once he shoots, everything will be a foregone conclusion. After listening to Yu Bo's words, Zhen Wuyang no longer spoke. With the elders, he carefully watched the picture together. Between the vast clouds, the 2 black-shirted rangers dressed in figures sat in the clouds, seemingly not in a hurry to compete for Xiandao, but they seemed to be traveling. This heaven, which carries the entire heaven, is completely composed of the giant water of Gaochuan, which is quite mysterious and vast. You said, how much assurance can we get to the end? On the empty flowing cloud, Xiaodi Junsheng feared that Jian Wushuang could not hear it and shouted. Jian Wushuang heard and said, I don't know, I try my best. So what if my brothers come over again? It's not easy, kill it back, but I think, in this heavenly court, they should also be able to converge a little bit, at most it's just a little action. No matter what, I will win Xiandao this time. There must be no mistake. So confident. I can feel that your siblings are very resentful to you. Maybe they will come together next time. Why, afraid? Xiao Dijuan asked with raised eyebrows. Of course I'm afraid that I'm drawn in for no reason, but I want to live for a few more years. Jian Wushuang lay back in the clouds and laid back. Little Emperor pouted, which can become Yangxian, which one does not regard Shouyuan as nothing? You old monster who doesn't know how many years have lived, are you so attached to longevity? Jian Wushuang felt very helpless. It has not been 10 million years since he entered the path of spiritual practice. Now he is actually called an old monster, and he adds some old-fashionedness. Moreover, he couldn't explain it, he was involved too much, and it was extremely likely to cause unnecessary troubles because of the missed words. I am afraid that they, the Yangxian in Dayanhuan, can hardly imagine a Yanxian who is only a few million years old. After arrogantly passing by, under the tug of the little emperor, the 2 fell into heaven. In the huge roaring water, the 2 figures drove the waves forward. Yang Xian, who participated in the battle for the peach, passed by, glancing at them, and hurried away. Until the last moment of fighting for Xiandao, every Yangxian was unwilling to confront the son of the Emperor Zhenwu Yang. Chapter 47-28. After all, with the exception of the little emperor whose strength was not announced, the remaining 6 sons all had the terrifying fighting power of tying the 3 Yangxian with one battle. In addition, each son can also carry an old companion with a deep realm, and can basically erase directly when facing the individual Yangxian. Of course, erasure is not a direct kill, but a teleportation. In this battle for Peach, basically, only the sons are fighting for it. Rao is so, the Yangxian who can attend the feast of the heavenly court are still rushing towards this. Although Xiandao is impossible to obtain, there are countless great chances in the heaven of this heaven. If you can get even a hint of fairy feeling somewhere, it will be a big transformation. Therefore, apart from a few sons, Most of those who participated in the peach robbing rushed to the supremacy. The giant rivers and rivers, standing forever, with grass and mayflies, accumulate in the sun and the moon. Every grass, tree, mountain, and water in this heaven has already had aura of vitality, and shuttled among them, the sublimation of the body is sublimating at a subtle speed. At the same time, there are also fairy spirits built by the way of heaven, which are very unfriendly to these interrupters. Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dejuan were very unlucky. When performing a reed crossing the river in a giant water, the unknown underwater fairy set off a huge wave and directly lifted the two into the water. Fortunately, the fairy at the bottom of the water is not malicious, but after a little bit of play, it disappears. Damn, it's really unpredictable. Jian Wushuang, who was embarrassed to the shore, fell back on the shore. After the last big voyage, he had some resistance to the water, fearing that he would meet the giant sea sky chapter again in the water, that kind of unknown and scary creature. Little Emperor's performance was not much better than Jian Wushuang's, and he was slightly gasping and helpless. Since the waterway is not easy to go, let's take the mountain road next. It seems that 1 year is enough, but in this vast sky, it is not enough. Jian Wushuang analyzed, and at the same time looked at the Xie Canglin. The little emperor nodded, according to you. However, just as the two were preparing for the route, a fairy resembling a giant ape, but with a dragon head, quietly protruded a huge head from the green forest in front of it. The turbid breath from the black hole-like nostrils is much stronger than the hurricane. Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dejuan glanced at each other, and both saw a bitterness in the other's eyes. Boom! A palm defeated a Yangxian figure, and at this moment, the sun's eyebrows were full of gloom. Behind him, I do not know when dozens of Yangxian gathered. After a moment, the sun corrected his voice in a low voice, you check in batches one by one, try to avoid the big conflict with the Yangxian next to the sun, but try not to cause a big conflict. The dozens of Yangxian promised at the same time, and then scattered across the sky in a flash. Mom, do you think that the one who won the Xiandao this time will be the son of Yanzi? A strange smile appeared on Baipao Yangxian's face. The second son laughed. Do you think that there is no strength at all, or can the sick emperor have a climate? The son corrected his eyebrows and twisted it into a Chuan character, and said in a deep voice, my partner, pay attention to your words and deeds, you have a sick tuberculosis, you rot me into the stomach, otherwise it will be passed into my emperor's ear, I must also be implicated. Follow the second son. Baipao Yangxian bowed his head to admit that he was wrong. This, on the other hand, is by no means your opponent. Young Master Zhong didn't open his mouth, his brows spread slowly. Yeah, if it's not the Emperor's protection, this shameful guy should die before he is born. The real blood and luck of the Emperor, no matter from the level of life or the perception of the road, are far beyond the top level of the same realm, and even this advantage has become more apparent after entering the realm of Yangxian. But there is a special case among their 7 sons. This special case is the son of Yang. As the eldest son of an emperor, his physique has been declining to the extreme since he was born, almost died, and accompanied by various tuberculosis, it is impossible to practice at all. This is a shame. As the bloodline of the emperor who controlled the avenue and waved to create the heavenly court, he would actually suffer from such an incredible illness. He couldn't figure it out. How could the Emperor Bajuwang have a bloodline suffering from tuberculosis? Even any blind treasure in the heaven realm could not be healed, as if it were some kind of curse, accompanying him until his death. The little emperor suffering from tuberculosis has also become a forbidden emperor Zhenwu Yang. No one knows except their 6 sons and their companions. How can a guy who vomits blood violently after strenuous exercise deserve to fight him? There was a sense of pleasure in the eyes of Gongzi Deng, and he secretly said, since I haven't stopped you from coming to heaven, then this time, in the face of the emperor and their face, you will step on your soul. What is the location of Xiandao now? Return to the second son. There is a special fluctuation in the direction of Jiaozhou, and the 4 sons and the 5 sons are likely to be there. Go to Jiaozhou, and at the same time release the news, let Yang Xian along the way, try to get rid of Gongzi Yang. Expensive. A loud roar rang through the wild forest, and the ancient giant tree began to collapse. I saw a huge to the extreme strange ape running in this green forest. The The sturdy body easily broke the giant tree in front of them. If you look closely, on the back of this strange ape's vast silver hair, the two dressed rangers appear to be lying on their backs contentedly. Jian Wushuang beat a full hiccup, and then gave a thumbs up to the little emperor. Just now a big hill-like fish entered the strange belly of both of them. What Jian Wushuang didn't think of was that this man who was a prince and had a gloomy face all day long, like someone who owed him 800 yuan, was actually a good fish roast. Just a piece of rock salt, a pile of towering green forest, it simply roasted the beautiful grilled fish. For food, Jian Wushuang has long gone. The reason for the roasted fish is purely when fighting with the apes under the seat, a fish immortal with a wise mind floats up from the bottom of the water, and coincidentally, the sword is a double-inch sword Mang, sent it to the west heavens impartially. Adhering to the principle of not wasting, Jian Wushuang reluctantly took it out of the water and prepared to sacrifice to the Five Organs Temple. The little emperor took over and baked a delicious grilled fish. Eating my grilled fish will help me win Xiandao. Xiao Dejuan raised his eyebrows to look at Jian Wushuang with a satisfied face. Chapter 47-29. Jian Wushuang was helpless and patted the broad back of his body. Can I say no? Most of this has entered this guy's stomach. No, you can't eat less than this guy, and you should work hard when you win the peach. Xiao Dejuan looked serious. Cannibalism is short. Jian Wushuang said leisurely, agreeing. Then two people and one beast continue to walk leisurely in the sky. At this moment, among the heavenly courts, all the veterans who were originally watching the pictures of the heavenly realm were all weird, and even the real Wuyang on the throne was twitching the corner of his mouth. Originally an extremely tense battle for the peach, when the picture changed, when he arrived at the two of them, it turned into a survival path for food exploration. Heavenly Emperor-S heavenly tree, so I was given this boy-S order. There is some blood in Zhen Wuyang's heart, and all the sky trees are all the top raw materials for the creation of heaven, and there is no heaven without the Emperor-S luck, and they can't grow at all. And the sky trees growing in the heavenly realm can be regarded as a fish roasted by the little emperor, and burned cleanly with a fire. However, when he saw that Xiao Dijun's face was no longer sullen, Zhen Wuyang Emperor suppressed the complaint and began to look at this vacation-like leisurely duo with great interest. Little Emperor, is this a broken pot? In the heavenly court, an elder could not help but whisper. I'm not sure, I look like the little emperor, it seems that I don't intend to compete for Xiandao. In the opinion of the old man, it is a wise move for the little emperor to show his demeanor as a brother, and let his brother be modest. If you talk more, you will be punished in this seat to go to heaven realm to take care of Qian Chumu. Heaven is still. Sitting on the back of the strange ape, Jian Wushuang looked at the chain iron plate on the neck of the strange ape, looking a little weird. What is your chain iron plate? Even Yangxian can be imprisoned. The little emperor nodded. Yes, unless all steps can be taken in full, otherwise all Yangxian can't escape my control. Jian Wushuang heard the words and felt awkward for a while, thinking that if it was not the reason for the imprisoned chain, how could he possibly be a prisoner for several days? Seemingly seeing where his heart was, the little emperor said again, this is a treasure in my emperor's hand, named Tian Tian Suo. When I took over the 6th heaven realm, the emperor paid me, and at the beginning it's not me who traps you, it's the little ones who do open their eyes. Jian Wushuang didn't pay much attention to the original things. After all, he only became a prisoner in less than a day, and he directly wiped out a Yangxian, and did not suffer a big loss. It just made him a little curious as to where he was caught. Before the sword Wushuang opened his mouth to prepare for an inquiry, an indescribable life-and-death crisis burst out of his consciousness. He didn't want to think about it, he released his strength directly, and slapped the giant ape's big head. Strange ape heart grasps the understanding, the huge body suddenly a face break, and then lie prone on the ground. A total of more than 10 magnificent and powerful forces swept from all directions, almost wiped the heads of Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dejuan. The gigantic giant forest cut off a large area, and the power of terror exploded. Standing in the air, Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijun looked cold. If I hit the head just now, I am afraid that I will be seriously injured on the spot. Immediately afterwards, 11 powerful Yangxian figures appeared, all looking at him strangely. A group of miscellaneous things dare to injure this seat in this heaven? Xiao Dejuan looked clouded, and his eyes were as thick as water. If he was not just Jian Wushuang, he would be hit hard even if he was not out of the game. As the first Yangxian, it was the support knot that put the Ju Si outside the Tianmen at the time. At this moment, he held a floating dust and a pair of immortals made the pie. He didn't care about Xiao Dijun's insults, but instead smiled. How much Xiao Dijun offends is really a last resort. I hope that Xiao Dijun can voluntarily withdraw and save the next big move. The little emperor looked awkwardly. Is the sun sending you? Fujie didn't open his mouth, but flicked the dust and said softly, please quit this little emperor to avoid the next big move. Miscellaneous things, find death. He shouted in rage, facing the 11 Yangxian instead of flinching, he directly confronted. A slender soft sword stirred the wind and the clouds, carrying the supreme power cover to press against the knot. Fujie's eyes flashed inconceivably, and then he smiled coldly, dusting the sky with his hands. You guys, do it. The dust blows up to 1,000,000 feet in the wind, and there is a lingering posture, carrying away. At the same time, the other 10 Yangxian also left, and all the magnificent Yangxian bombarded the little emperor. Strive to get it out of the battle. But at the next moment, a blade of sharp sword was caught in the wind, like a torn scarf, and suddenly cut forward. The dust that was about to cover up the sky was directly cut into 2 pieces under this quietly rising sword. And the little emperor also broke from there. Stab a sword straight. Life and death terror surged into my heart, and the knot was almost a subconscious head, only to escape the unmatched sword. A drop of Yin Hongxian blood rolled off the slender cut between the necks and soaked the shoulder robe. Fujie recovered from the shock and looked at Xiao Dijun's eyes full of hatred. Don't keep your hands, attack with all your strength, he shouted, and immediately manipulated the dust that had been cut off an inch in his hand, and ran away. The little emperor stood in its place without any fear, and a dark field centered on him, spreading quietly like vines to the surroundings. And the support not blinded by hatred, wherever he noticed the subtle changes in the air around him, he had to hit him with 5 fingers. But the surrounding air seemed to be muddy, and he felt that the release of the force in his body was slow. With the same feeling, there are other Yangxian. The time seems to be extended for a long time, but Fujie only feels that he has been gliding in the air for a long time but has not yet landed. The emperor's incomprehensible face gradually enlarged, and at the same time a figure with a broken sword slowly emerged, and the cold eyes were almost the same. No, why are there 2 little emperors? What responded to him was a sword that was almost terrifying. A colorful sword, each sword reflects colorful huamang in the air, xianhe honging one after another, carrying infinite killing intention, all cut to the support knot. The Yangxian body burst open in an instant. Only the prosperity of a sword breaks the body of the immortal. Fujie fairy body shattered and turned into powder, and at the same time a fairy pill-sized fairy source escaped from it and fled in a panic. The little emperor gripped it from a distance, and the surrounding space rose like a big invisible hand, and directly took that fairy source back into his hand. Chapter 47:30. As if the heart was beating vigorously, Fujie's terrified voice resounded from the fairy source. Little emperor, it's all my fault, it's all my fault, I will never target you anymore, let me go, I will voluntarily quit. The little emperor looked calm. Tell me, who asked you to kill me? Fujie Xianyuan seemed to be struggling for a while, and finally struggled. Yes, it is the second son. After hearing this answer, he was not surprised. There wasn't even a slight wave in his eyes. Little emperor, this is in heaven, you can't. Before even saying a word, the little emperor directly crushed his fairy source. In the heavenly realm, behead a Yangxian. Yangxian, who was seeing this scene all around, was shocked. They did not expect that Xiao Dijun would dare to kill him. This is one of the ceremonies that the emperor once set up in the heaven realm that has heavenly court. One of them is that heavenly court cannot be stained with blood. But right now, the little emperor actually wiped out a Yangxian in this heaven. They all took a step back and panicked in their eyes. Once something starts, it is doomed to look back. When the sword with the broken sword was unparalleled and the unscrupulous sword chopped off Yangxian, the remaining 9 Yangxian, the only remaining fighting intention in the heart, were replaced by fear. Then, all fled without flesh. But how can they easily leave? Adhering to the concept of cutting grass and eradicating roots, Jian Wushuang directly released the sword spirit of Xinghe Lake and the sea, a majestic star style, cut down. The most common one is straight, but it seems to have swept the millions of miles around the space, and with the general trend of stars, the every inch of space pointed by Jianfeng is suppress. At the same time, countless sword-shaped condensed tongshanmangs rose from the ground and swept up. This is an explosive sword. Even if Yangxian is under this style, he can only drink hatred. 3 Yangxian were unable to dodge, and were devoured and destroyed on the spot, and no trace of the fairy source remained. The little emperor also moves forward, like a ghost. Every time he strikes, he directly wipes out a source of immortal fairy. In this moment, 6 Yangxian have been destroyed. Their speed was so fast that the emperor sitting in the heavenly court and the elders were too late to shoot, and there were only 2 Yangxian left in the encirclement. Finally, when Jian Wushuang's blade was about to be cut, the 2 Yangxian under that blade quietly disappeared. Buzz! The space was rippling, and the 2 almost immortal Yanxian fell straight into the heavenly palace. Jian Wushuang couldn't hold back, and the Tai Luo Excalibur in his hand almost flew himself out. The little emperor raised his head, and Sen Lung looked at the location of the heavenly court. Yongzi Yang, do you know that you have violated the law? A voice with irrepressible anger resounded in the heavens, the voice of the Emperor Zhenwu Yang. Yongzi Yang doesn't know which sky rule was violated, please also express. Xiaodi Jun was not afraid, coldly said. Heaven cannot be stained with blood, but you are in Tianting, and you can kill Yangxian directly, and you still refuse to confess your sins? The little emperor heard the words and smiled coldly. It's good for me to kill Yangxian, but it's not the heaven, but the heaven. Where do I start breaking the rules? Heaven was dead, and at the end, a suffocating anger came from the direction of heaven, and everything was calm again. Fuck things. A palm shot towards the front of the case, the lips of Zhenwu Yang Emperor's lips tremble slightly. All the elders didn't say a word. The scene in the world just now was all taken into view. The 2's expressions are too shocking. Especially the young man with the broken sword, in the area of Yangxian, easily kills Yangxian in the same realm, and it seems that it is not laborious. Even from their eyes, it is incredible. The emperor breathes his anger, and the little emperor will converge in the next trip. Yu Bo whispered consolation. Emperor Zhenwu Yang closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. At this time, the 2 Yangxian who were rescued were all kneeling on the ground, terrified. Thank you, Emperor, for your kindness. Where is Chen Qing? The Emperor is on, the minister is here. A middle-aged man in a green shirt hurried in from outside the hall. Throw these 2 guys out and never step into heaven again. Emperor Zhenwu Yang could not doubt it with his hand on his forehead. Chen Qing smiled, get orders. Then he smiled, flying directly out of the heavenly court like a little chicken, one by one. The veterans of the institute turned their eyes to the scroll again, each with a touch of eagerness. There was no suspense in the end, there was a change, and it was broken by 2 guys who didn't follow the rules, and everything became interesting. Since the expansion of Tianyu to the extreme, Zhen Wuyang became the emperor, and these veterans have not fought any wars, that is, they haven't even used their strength for a long time. According to the rules, Shou Yuan day after day seems to be stirred up with a little interest. They are all looking forward and curious. In the heaven realm, more than 10 Yangxian who came to contain were solved, and Jian Wushuang slowly spit out a sigh of breath, and brought the Tai Luo Excalibur back into the sheath. Brother Jian, it is really powerful. Xiao Dejuan looked at him with a slight smile, and there was some blood on his pale face. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. If conditions permit, cutting the grass is the best decision to avoid uncontrollable changes in the future. The little emperor nodded his head, and he found that some of his views actually coincided with Jian Wushuang's ideas. In order to avoid a change in the following journey, as early as this battle started, Jian Wushuang had already decided not to let a Yangxian escape, and naturally the little emperor decided to obliterate Fujie. It was the beginning. He kicked towards the strange ape lying on the ground like a hill. Jian Wushuang was crying and laughing. This guy would look at the time like this. As early as the first time he started playing, he lay on the ground and pretended to die. I noticed that the crisis was lifted. This big guy hurriedly climbed up, his dragon-like head, actually looked at Jian Wushuang with some flattering. Hey, I'm your master. You have to know who is pleased. Xiao Dijun said dissatisfiedly. Jian Wushuang strode directly on the back of the strange ape. At this moment, a layer of colorful ripples wafted across the heavenly realm, and a towering pillar of sky-high giant pillars reached the dome. Xiandao appeared. The little emperor said softly. Jian Wushuang also noticed the colorful pillars, and the calm heart platform also fluctuated a bit. The level of dynamism is very special, but it seems to fit a certain shackles. It is a great temptation for every Yangxian, and Xiantao's present life means that more intense competition has begun. Chizzy won the peach before it officially started. Chapter 47:31. In this vast expanse of heaven, almost at the same time that the sky-high pillar was ascended, nearly 100 bodies carried the general trend and swept away from the wild and the wild. Congratulations to the 4 sons who won Xiandao. Amidst the misty mountains and rivers, a handsome young man dressed in white clothes and standing on the top of the mountain holds a fairy peach in the color of glass in his hand. Behind him stood nearly 20 powerful Yangxian. And this handsome young man is the 4th brother of Gongzi Yang, also known as Gongzi Qian. Xiandao exudes a faint breath without interruption. With his 5 senses intuition, he almost rushed to Jiaozhou, the most central part of the heaven realm, to cut the Shanshan mountain and obtain Xiandao. A smug look rose from the bottom of his eyes, which was also the first time he got Xiandao. In the previous battles for winning the peach, it was not him but the son who corrected the leader. But this time, I am afraid the winner has changed. Those who can win Xiandao the first time have almost laid the ground, and even only need to hide it in the next time. Except for the premeditated containment, it would not be too easy to spend 7 days. However, Gongzi Qian did not think that he had won the victory. Each of his brothers is not a fuel-efficient lamp. Both strength and appeal are extremely strong. It's almost 20 days now. Except for the big brother who has almost no threats, I am afraid that the Yangxian who have participated in this battle for the peach will probably have split into several camps. Thinking of this, Gongzi Qian stretched out his hand to draw a breath from Xiandao and gave it to a Yangxian beside him. Bring this breath, you will leave here, how far you go, and at the same time look for Gongzi Yang along the way, try to make him the target. The middle-aged Yangxian heart grasped the magical power and used a little magical power to transform the breath in his hand into the appearance of Xiandao. For sons, rest assured, let us do the rest. Gong Ziqian nodded with satisfaction. More than 20 Yangxian behind him were divided into 2 teams, one team followed him, the other team escorted the fake Xiandao away. Immortal Cloud is vast, he did not stay at all, carrying 12 Yangxian ready to leave. At this moment, a sense of crisis of great terror suddenly surged from behind. Father, what are you going to do in such a hurry? It was a little thin, with a shadowy figure in his eyes slowly coming out of the Zhanglin, and he was alone. But only such a figure appeared, but it made all Yangxian like enemy. Gong Ziqian's pupils shrank suddenly, as if he saw the most unwilling to face. In this battle for the peach, in addition to the son's correction, there are 2 people who make him most afraid. One is Gongzi Yu, and the other is the figure at the moment. There is no reason for him, and there are rumors that the 2 of them have realized their respective fairy styles. Once you realize the fairy style, even if there is only a trace, it means that you have taken that step, and only waiting for the opportunity to arrive, you can completely go to the next level. Originally thinking that at least 2 or 3 days later, they would find that they had chased one of the toughest guys without thinking for a long time. Gongzi Qian smiled stiffly. It turns out to be the 5th brother. Why, did you detect the breath of Xiandao? Where? The solitary son Mo apparently did not want to speak more, reaching for his finger directly, and his voice was low. 4th brother, hand Xiandao to me. I will let you leave, and it is better to be expelled on the spot. There was a touch of disgust in Gong Ziqian's eyes. It's up to you. Do you know how many Yangxian are stuck around you? I advise you how far you can roll, and I will save myself later. It seems that there is no negotiation. Young Master Mo spread his hand, with a sneer in his eyes. Do it. With Gongzi Qian's anger, all Yangxian all left, and the majestic Yanli turned into a dense net and turned down towards the sun's ink pocket mob. Taking the sun ink as the center, the dark blue crystals were suddenly refracted throughout the air, just like the ripples on the lake, and began to move regularly. At the same time, young Master Mo's palm strokes a long whip, which is 100 feet long and is formed by the condensation of dark blue crystals, and falls from the ripples. A faint burst of detachment suddenly burst into the sky. The long whip stopped and the unimaginable potential energy was rippled and scattered. For those who approached, almost in a face, the body of the shattered, and then the white light flashed away from the heaven. Young Master Mo held this crystal long whip, and the whole body seemed to be surging with location and terrible energy. Every time the long whip was thrown, it was able to directly defeat a Yangxian. Each of them belongs to the Yangxian who exist in the top of the heaven, but they are difficult to resist even the hit of the sun. But it was tens of hours, 12 Yangxian, all under the attack of Gongzi Mo, all out. A stream of cold sweat flowed out from Gongzi Qian's temples, and it all happened so quickly that he was too late when he had the idea of escape. Gongzi Mo's companion came out of the darkness at this time and blocked his way. Father, let Xiandao hand in, I will let you two leave. The young son Mo said softly. The crystalline long whip in his hand was like a dragon, entrenched behind him, and the situation was magnificent. 4 sons, give it to him, leaving Qingshan without worrying about firewood. Gongzi Qian's companion whispered. He gritted his teeth without saying a word. If Xiandao was handed over, it was almost declared to be out of disguise. In the later period, the peach contenders would only be able to choose from the 3 of Gongzi Jiao, Gongzi Yu and Gongzi Mo. After a moment, Master Z decided to grind his teeth and threw the fairy peach in his arms to Master Z. Looking at the precious light flowing in the hand, the fairy peach with the rainbow shadows, the youngster Mo smiled secretly, and then put it in his arms. Large companion, let's go. Young Master Qian didn't mean to stay at all, and his feet suddenly lifted up, but the next moment, the crystal long whip that was entrenched in the air shot up and pulled directly Gongzi Qian, with his companion. Before they even made a sound, they disappeared completely. Everything seemed as if nothing had happened, the silence was at its extreme. At this broken mountain top, only 2 figures were left at the moment. The corners of Gongzi Mo's mouth were traced with a smile, and his figure disappeared. Everything is silent again. And not far from this broken mountain top, under a huge cliff, a strange ape was curling in between, and the 2 wheels were full of tension in their big eyes. Lying on the body of the strange ape, witnessing all of Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijuan, all at the moment were dignified, apparently shocked by Master Mo's fierce means. Chapter 47-32. 10 breathing time, with one's own strength, wipe out the 12 Yangxian. What kind of existence can this be so freehand? Even sword warriors, when facing dozens of Yangxians encirclement, they can only go roundabout, and it is almost impossible to do so easily. But the impossible scene actually happened. Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijun came to the place under the leadership of the strange ape only a moment after the appearance of Gongzi Mo. After wanting to take advantage of both defeats, he and his 2 fishermen took advantage of them and snatched Xiandao, but did not expect to see this shocking scene. As a result, he also had a preliminary judgment on the son Mo, who had never felt a sense of existence. Is this guy strong? It's ridiculous. Jian Wushuang looked at Xiao Dijuan, his face dignified. A little meaning flashed in the eyes of the little emperor. It seems that they have also been breaking through. When he was about to speak, there was a powerful force on the broken mountain. Immediately afterwards, the sun came to here with more than 20 Yangxian. Feeling the fluctuation of the strength in the air around him, the sun's eyebrows condensed into the word Chuan. Obviously there was a fight here not long ago, but he came a step late. Xiandao, just in Jiaozhou, he shouldn't go far, he'll find it for me. The sun murmured. A group of Yangxian behind him, even if the life was led scattered to the entire Jiaozhou. Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijun rode on the head of the strange ape and hid under the cliff, ready to wait for the sun to get away, and then continue to move. But at the next moment, the frank ape, who had been honestly holding his breath, suddenly snorted. Julie directly flicked the two in a state of ignorance, and then fell behind him unfairly. The sun, who was in deep contemplation, was suddenly taken aback, turned around and saw the duo who didn't know when they appeared, his face blank and alert. "It's you, Gongzi Yang?" The two were also very confused, and could not imagine that they would meet in this way. The little emperor quickly calmed down and looked calmly at the sun. "What about me?" It seemed that he thought of something, and Gongzi's Heng began to examine the two of them. "Is Yandao not in your hands? How about now, are you qualified to take it away?" Xiao Dijun's eyes showed disdain. The sun smiled coldly and smiled. "I still have some scruples in the heavenly court, but in this world, we will calculate the old account and the new account together. It's you alone." Little Emperor's eyes were lightly contemptuous and disdainful throughout. It seemed that he felt humiliation, and the sun sighed and shouted, and a strong force of urgency rushed up, stirring the Tsanglin earthquake. At the same time, the white robe Yangxian behind him also naturally marked the sword Wushuang. The four figures are about to start a war. The strange ape is lying on the cliff, and it seems to be preparing for a sneak attack. But in the blink of an eye, the prince's breath rose to the peak, and Sen Lung's gaze almost swallowed the entire little emperor. Just before the inevitable hands-on, a sudden voice sounded. "Hey, you are here too." Xiao Dijun and Gongzi Jiao looked at the voice at the same time. I saw a handsome young man in a white shirt, thin and young, and flew over. There was absolutely no consciousness to retreat. "What are you doing here?" The young man wared vigilantly and secretly improved his strength. The handsome young man scratched his head. "Of course I came to Xiandao. Just now my partner said that there was a vision in Jiaozhou." The sun corrected. "Are you afraid of sending you out now?" Then I will go first, you continue." Jun Lang Youth grinned, and hurriedly urged his partner to leave quickly. With the sudden blending of this handsome young man, this inevitable battle stopped tacitly. They all have concerns, such as the birth of Xiandao in Jiaozhou, the center of the world, and the rest of the emperor and Yang Xian are also coming gradually. If the two defeats at this moment are both injured, they will be extremely passive in the next competition. With a wave of his sleeves, the sun looked at Xiao Dijun coldly, and then turned away. The entire Jiaozhou seemed to be quiet again. "It's not too late, we have to leave to find Gongzi Mo quickly." Xiao Dijun turned to look at Zhen Wushuang. He nodded and looked around for a week when he found no hidden ambush. He waved and picked up the strange ape who was still lying on the edge of the cliff. "Let's expose it again next time. Be careful to put you on the fire and bake it." After slamming the big guy's head hard, Zhen Wushuang didn't have a good air. The strange ape heard the words and hurriedly shook his huge head, looking at him kindly. Regarding this strange ape, when he was rushing to Jiaozhou, the two of them were ready to put it back, but accidentally discovered that it had a keen sense of Xiantao's breath and great crisis, and naturally continued to carry this big burden. Sitting on the back of the strange ape again, the two followed the route where the Sun Mo disappeared and pursued it. "Brother, long time no see. As we traveled through the mountains and forests for a long time, one did not know where to start, and an abrupt voice resounded in my ears." Zhen Wushuang's heart was fixed, and he looked subconsciously to his side. I saw the handsome young man who had left before. At this moment, he didn't know where he got out of it, and he looked at Xiao Dijun and grinned. A slender soft sword was pulled out suddenly, straight forward, and he would pierce his neck by an inch. The Junlang youth hurriedly retreated, giving way to a safe distance. How far away, dare to step forward and die? Xiao Dijun glanced coldly at him, writing lightly. He smiled awkwardly. "In fact, brother, I am not malicious to you, I just want to tell you, it is best not to compete with the second brother for their fairy peach. Their strength and state are only a line away from the elders. I am afraid of you." The little emperor looked at him sharply and looked at him. "If you talk more, I will cut your tongue now." Junlang youth helpless had to leave with his partner. As he was about to leave, he suddenly turned back and said, "Come on, brother, no matter what, I will try my best to help you when I win the peach." After saying this sentence, The figure of the handsome young man disappeared without a trace. The little emperor looked like he didn't hear, and looked forward, calm and abnormal. This little brother is not bad, but also yours? Jian Wushuang turned around and asked. 7 sons, the sun is coming. The little emperor seemed unwilling to mention the identities of the various emperors, and after expressing his identity, he remained silent. Jian Wushuang did not have much interest in knowing this. After a simple nod, he entered Wu sit on the back of this strange ape. It has been more than 1 month since the battle for the peach, and the owner of Xiandao has already known who it is. The only thing that matters now is how to wander among these powerful and perverted emperors, and seize Xiandao. Chapter 47-33. Judging from the previous performances of Master Zimo, I am afraid that Jian Wushuang will not have much assurance to win. Coupled with the sun and other remaining emperors, they want to seize Xiandao from them and keep them for 7 days, which is far more difficult than imagined. By mistakenly hitting and catching a strange ape that is extremely sensitive to the breath of Xiandao, this saves the sword Wushuang 2 people a lot of time. They only need to sit on the back of the strange ape to get close to the target. In the following journey, Jian Wushuang and Shaodijun sent away more than 20 Yangxian outs. With the previous warning from the Emperor Zhen Wuyang, he and the 2 had a little restraint, and they no longer focused on killing. Anyone who did not actively provoke provokers was too lazy to stop. At the same time, the young man Mo, who had Xiandao hidden, was about to step out of Jiaozhou, and a crisis of carrying the general situation came. Before seeing nearly 30 Yangxian encircled, a young man with the same heroic appearance as his son also followed. This time, it was the turn of the pupils ink pupils, and the pupil Yu Ziyu. If Jian Wushuang is here, he can surely find that this young man called Gong Ziyu is the guy who was beaten by the little emperor in the heavenly court that day. 5 brother, don't come unharmed. Young Master Yu pulled the corner of his mouth and said with a smile. Gongzi Mo did not answer. After taking a deep breath, he prepared to leave with his companion. Since the 5th brother is going so anxiously, leave Xiandao and go. Young Master Yu slowly stretched out his palm. His face changed slightly, and then he gritted his teeth. Xiandao gives you, let me go. Naturally, I can do it. Then a slap-sized package was thrown directly by the Sunin chick towards the Sunin feather. There was an eager flash in Gongzi Yu's eyes, and he stretched out his hand to catch the package, but then he frowned. In the same moment, Gongzi Mo suddenly burst into unmatched strength and went straight to the sky to plunder. Knowing that he was fooled, the Sun Ziyu directly crushed the parcel wrapped with stones in his hand. All for me. He far underestimated the terrible energy of more than 30 Yangxian, and also overestimated himself. It's almost 100 miles to escape, and all the retreat around the body is cut off. Countless majestic forces are connected to each other, which can be revealed. Even if he realizes the foundation of the fairy style, it will not help. Dark blue crystals began to appear in the air, and at the same time a long whip like a dragon fell in the hands of Sun Mo. He was still not ready to compromise and was struggling with the final. Young Master Mo, is your brain kicked by a donkey? Don't forget everything we have done, now you are going to look back at me for a fairy peach? The young man's eyes were murky and he growled angrily. Master Mosi was unimpressed. I will give Xiandao to you and I will definitely be out of the game, so do you think I will give it to you directly? If you want, just come and get it yourself. There was a touch of disgust in Gong Ziyu's eyes. His right hand was directly grasped in the void, and a long sharp sword came to the fore. In the face of Gong Ziyu, Gong Zimo didn't have a half chance. By virtue of his own understanding of a trace of immortality, he can expel Gongzi Qian out of the game. It is conceivable that the male Ziyu who has been immersed in the fairy style for a long time will be a blow to him. Rao is so, he did not intend to give up Xiandao Arch. As long as 100 feet, the long whip like a dragon is the first to launch an offensive, enough to tear the whip blade of any situation, leaving a faint white mark in the heavens and smashing towards the male Ziyu. Without the unfavorable whip, he encountered a hard stubble for the first time. A sword mountain is the head, and the male Ziyu directly used the almost complete fairy style, and attacked it. At the moment, The space around them seems to reflect a diamond-shaped colorful Chinese mangosteen, which directly engulfed and resolved the swift and fierce offensive. At the same time, a thorny needle-like thorn emerged from each diamond-shaped huamang, with hundreds of millions of strand. This sturdy Mangyi came down with Jianshan's heavy cover, and easily sat off the long whip of the sun's ink, strangling his breath. Hua Mang flashed, and he disappeared with his companion, and he was out. A fairy style containing unique and hegemonic energy is used. When the ink of the sun is easily erased, the son of Yuzi is also stressed. He panted slightly, reached out to grab the fairy peach that fell to the ground, and was ready to leave without stopping for a moment. At this time, the abrupt but familiar opening speech sounded from the ears, making the heart of Gong Ziyu sink heavily. "Third brother, don't come unharmed." The younger son drifted from the dark, with a bit of teasing in his eyes. Gong Ziyu looked at him. "You kept up with it earlier, right? Have you been hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity?" "Yes, I did come before you, but you are too anxious, so I will let you perform more. Now, it's time for me to harvest." The younger corrected his smile, and stretched out his palm as he had done before. "Do it." How could Gong Ziyu wait for his death, and with a direct order, more than 30 yangxian moved, and directly welcomed the more than 10 yangxian brought by Gongzi. Since the beginning of the battle for Peach, the most fierce battle has begun. At the first time when the scene was chaotic, Gong Ziyu was pregnant with Xiandao, ready to escape. It's just that the next scene made his mood fall to the bottom. "Young Master Hua?" "Young Master Yu gritted his teeth. "Do you want to blend in too?" The noble figure of the prince, Hua, is called, and his brows are light. Gong Ziyu heard the words and sneered. "Yongzi Hua, even if Xiandao falls into your hands, do you think you can have it for yourself? Do you think that Gongzi will let you go?" Gongzi Hua shrugged. "I can't control that much. Now when it's urgent, remove Xiandao from your hands and piggyback you out." With his voice falling down, there are also more than 20 Yangxian appeared, joined the battle. A veil of celestial power followed. The sun's wrist shook, and his sharp sword was directly torn. Regarding the enclosing Prince Hua, Prince Yu is not afraid. He has mastered a fairy style. In addition to the impenetrable second elder son, he can stand proudly among the 7 disciples. He is worried that once he enters the melee, his advantage will be completely lost, and it is likely that he will miss Xiandao again. Therefore, dogfight is the most unwilling situation that Gong Ziyu sees, full of too much uncertainty. In addition to the young Emperor Yanzi who has never appeared, and the 7 younger sons, the 3 emperors have already carried out the most intense competition. After smashing a Yangxian with one palm, Gong Ziyu, no matter what else, fled the battle directly. Chapter 47-34. Huang's general situation burst out from his body, and he even squeezed a gap from the battle situation. Looking at the 2 sons who were encircled by dozens of Yangxian, Gonghe and Gonghua, Gong Ziyu smiled triumphantly, then stepped on the rock and walked away. "Want to go?" The young man corrected his eyes in cold eyes, and stretched out his hand to grasp it from a distance, and suddenly a great force twisted the air, blocking the way of the young man Yu. Almost at the same time, the young son Hua broke out, and the big companion around him blocked the attack of the 10-digit Yangxian and sent it out. Yanli turned into a sharp cone shape and ran straight to the back of the young man's feather to stab it. If he hits so hard, he will definitely be hit hard. But just at the moment, Gong Ziyu's figure was dimmed for a moment, and the arrow-like force passed through his back, but he didn't hurt him. Gong Ziyu looked back secretly, and then a pair of huge crystal wings were spawned from behind, flying into the sky. "Go away." The young man drank his anger and shoved his palms suddenly, and a red figure swept across the mountain. All Yangxian only felt the darkness in front of him, and those who were at the center of this crimson drawing were hit the spot. The top of the mountain is empty, and the sun is standing at the center of the densely scrolled picture, and the strength of the whole body has been transformed into a crystal dark red. The only remaining son, Hua, and more than a dozen Yangxian all looked at Gongzi correction with an ugly look. Watching Gongzi Yu walking away with Xiandao, Gongzi Jiao transferred all his inner anger to Gongzi Hua's head. Seeing the undisguised murder in the eyes of the son slowly retreated. "No, brother, you better think clearly, without me." He hadn't finished his words yet, and the sun did not hesitate to cover the force of coming down, directly breaking his divine body and letting him out. At this point, in the battle for the peach, 3 emperors have been eliminated. The only remaining little emperor is still at the edge of the paddling stage, and the young man disappears out of thin air, and the one who really threatens the young man is only the young man. It is also understood that a fairy style, the male Ziyu is about to take that step completely. He never wants to see the male Ziyu become stronger than him. Taking Xiandao is the first step. In order to save unnecessary troubles, all the Yangxian of the other emperor camps were removed. Jiaozhou has a powerful terrain and is the pinnacle of the heavenly realm, but there is another giant mountain of Xianshan, which is about 100 million feet high, and the pinnacle is adjacent to the heaven. Right now, a figure carrying dark blue wings, breaking through the layers of flowing clouds transformed by the rich vigorous force, went straight to the giant river of the fairy mountain. Now it is the 2nd day of holding the fairy peach, and there are 5 days before the 7-day limit. The male Ziyu only needs to maintain such a high-speed soaring, and it is very likely to become the last peach taker. At that time, as long as he enters the Xianshan giant river to hide, even if the sun insists on finding himself, time is running out. Thinking of this, he smiled triumphantly. His figure accelerated to climb in the mountains. In order to avoid exposure, the sun Ziyu went forward alone, and he didn't even bring his close companion with him. What he did was try his best to hide himself from the clouds. Feeling the warm breath from his arms, Gongziyu finally failed to resist the temptation and took Xiandao in his hands again. There seems to be shackles of numerology, and the most extreme force is surging and tempting. If you don't know that Xiandao has a layer of prohibition on it, I'm afraid the sun will swallow it on the spot. The more he looked, the more he coveted, and the head of Master Ziyu gradually became hot. He had been trapped in Yangxian realm for too long, and he had long forgotten his meaning. 5 days is just a flash, but the variables that can occur are too large. If you miss this time, you have to wait another year. He must never wait any longer. He can feel that the sun is correcting something quietly brewing. If he fails to ascend, he will be greeted by a storm in the future. Thinking about it, Gongziyu's already hesitant gaze became firmer. He looked up at the immortal mountain Shenfeng, which was nearly adjacent to the heavenly court, and reached a billions of feet. At the next moment, Xiandao was reinserted into his arms, and then his arms condensed vast expanse of strength. Like a long whale sucking water, the rich dynamism in the whole heaven rushed towards him. The magnificent shadows began to be reflected in each space. A power that transcended Yangxian diffused, while the strands of black hair turned into white hair. This should not belong to the power of Gongziyu, but he was driven out by him. The only possibility is overdraft. His future in the overwhelming state of overdraft. But at the moment, Gongziyu's eyes were only crazy. Only the power beyond Yangxian can shake that fairy mountain peak. The next moment, the Sun Yu started. He looked like an ancient deity. Every step was shocking. The soles of the feet easily torn the mountains and rivers, and breathing was vigorous. Then, he reached the billions of feet high, enough to adjoin the heavenly mountain fairy mountain, actually intending to pull it off. Infinite strength, destroying Shenfeng with his body. The whole celestial realm began to oscillate, and the gully gullied the earth. Tianhe rushed back and forth, countless fairy wail. A collapsing sound rumbled through the earth's center, and numerous fine cracks sprawled from the roots of the mountain. This immense mountain fairy peak actually collapsed. The Prince Yu Yu, who was transformed into a huge treasure phase, was full of madness at this moment. With his shoulders against the belly of the mountain, he tried his best to pull out the fairy mountain. What is this kid doing? Sitting on the heavenly throne, Zhen Huayang's eyebrows were tightened. Is it possible that there is no place for strength? The rest of the elders were shocked and puzzled to see this scene. They could not imagine why Gongziyu did so, and could only wait and see. It's like wrestling. The Sun Yu embraces this fairy mountain and struggles hard. The feedback from the earth's core breaks, indicating that the interior of Xianshan is beginning to crack. www.mtlnovel.com, suddenly broken. The innumerable boulders dropped and caused a series of disasters, and the earth was hollowed out of the deep abyss. The unimaginable weight and height make Yangxian desperate enough. But so far, he was pulled off by the sun. Even Zhen Wuyang was a little surprised. He had such a terrifying power that he was able to cause serious damage to heaven. At the moment, the black hair of the sun's feathers became mottled, and everyone didn't know why he did it, only he knew it. The prohibition on Xiandao was planted by Emperor Zhen Wuyang, and it is impossible for all Yangxian who entered the war to open it. However, Gongziyu knew that this Fangtian realm had the same root as the prohibition on Xiandao. Chapter 47-35. Since they cannot use their own power to destroy the prohibition on Xiandao, what if they use the power of the emperor to destroy the embargo imposed by the emperor? And this fairy mountain Shenfeng is the foundation of heaven created by the emperor Zhen Wuyang long ago. Gongziyu is to use the power of the emperor to destroy the ban on Xiandao. Embracing immortal mountain Shenfeng with one hand, he shook his hand and took out the fairy peach in his arms, and then threw it into the mountain root like an abyss. At that time, you only need to smash this fairy mountain peak, and you will be able to smash it. But at the same time, a strange ape croaked through the world, and I saw in the destroyed mountains and rivers that 1,000 giant apes flexibly traversed in the meantime. It fell into the hands of the strange ape. Good job. At this moment, even the shadowy little emperor couldn't help but lift his mouth. The sun you surrounded by the fairy peak of Xianshan Mountain looked very real. When he saw that the strange ape had intercepted Xiandao from the air, he was furious. Beast, dare. The strange ape raised his head with an anthropomorphic grin, then twisted his huge figure and disappeared into the broken mountains and rivers. Gongziyu was furious, embracing the immense mountain of Xianshan Mountain, and threw it wildly at the place where the great ape was. This was a catastrophic moment, and the entire heaven and earth could not bear it, and began to collapse. Sword Wushuang, who was sitting on the back of the giant ape, looked up at the shadow that covered the sky and suddenly pulled out the Tai Luo Excalibur from his waist, and poked directly on the of the strange ape. The strange ape crowed in pain, and ran out with a speed that was almost extreme. Millions of miles in a flash. Xianshan Shenfeng, which smashed to the sky and smashed to the ground, could not bear the great force, and broke from the mountain's belly. Gongziyu seemed to be completely crazy, and his palms swept out of the supreme force, all strangled in the direction of Zhen Wushuang. The atmosphere of the heavens has been disturbed, and the shock wave generated by the Xianshan Shenfeng smashing the ground, even Yangxian, cannot stand. Almost when the young son Yu was pulling the fairy mountain, the younger son hurried away, and the extremely powerful body also surrounded from the wild. However, after such an intensive offensive stopped for a while, both of them were dressed in black rangers, slowly emerged from the mountains, and climbed into the sky. Gongziyu's big mouth breathing, overdrawing the realm of the future, has already caused irreversible damage to him, and only Xiandao can make up for it. Return Xiandao to me soon. Mouthless breathing, Gongziyu looked at Xiao Dijun, hate. Holding that Huamang's circulating fairy peach, Xiao Dijun smiled sullenly. Want? Are you qualified to fetch it now? Come to me, you waste. Gongziyu growled angrily, and the constant loss of the realm inside made him afraid. Upon hearing the word waste, Xiao Dijun's cold face suddenly sank, and a slender soft sword quietly condensed in his hand. At the next moment, he threw Xiandao directly to Zhen Wushuang, standing alone and moving forward. The vast swordsmanship surged into a unique sword that pierced the male plume. The Prince Yu Yu, who is in a rage, is not afraid, and his palms are united, as if the strength of Yuan Yuan is like a prison. The collision between the two directly wiped out the sword of the little emperor. At the same time, young Master Yu already had a murderous intention in his heart, and he began to reflect the colorful intention in the sky behind him. On one side, the treasure phase that can cause the alienation of the heavens is condensed out, and then facing the little emperor, the giant palm covering the sky falls and sinks. This is a fairy style. It is a fairy style that can be controlled beyond the realm of Yangxian. In the current environment, once used, it means that the endless situation will begin. I want you to die, the humblest waste. It seems to vent all the negative evil thoughts suppressed in the bottom of my heart. Gongzi Yu's all-in-one style is rushed to be killed. As long as the little emperor can't escape, only Xianyuan can break this road. But the little emperor stood on the spot, his eyes were calm and calm. Young Master Yang, hurry away. In the distance, Jian Wushuang's voice sounded. The little emperor slowly raised the corner of his mouth, facing the magnificent power, and raised a thin arm. I have never wanted to be any of your elder brothers, and naturally I will not perform the corresponding duties. Today, if you want to kill me, I will naturally return it in the same way. The indifferent to almost indifferent voice resounded, and there was no emotional fluctuation in his eyes from beginning to end. The long hair broke through the girdle and fluttered in the air. A breath of silence, nothingness, the mixture of black and white diffused, as in the same round without any warm big day, slowly rising. Gongzi Yu's crazy eyes were clear, revealing incredible eyes. That kind of breath is fairy style. No, it's impossible. How can this kind of guy who can't even comprehend the cultivation of spiritual practice realize the fairy style? The giant palm of the sky collided with the dead day of Hayo and White, which inspired the most terrible martyrdom. It has surpassed the power of Yangxian realm and instantly cleared all visible objects. The heavens and the earth are collapsing, the mountains and rivers are all destroyed. Ji Day made every Yangxian cover his eyes subconsciously. Jian Wushuang was also a little shocked. He knew something about Xiaodijun himself. The little emperor seems to suffer from a certain hidden disease, whether it is the state of the realm or the state of the divine body, which can only compete with the ordinary Yangxian. But now, with his weak body, he released such a terrible form, which shocked Jian Wushuang, and at the same time, he was puzzled. Did Xiaodijun keep concealing the situation before? Now is his real strength. When the polar day dissipated, the two figures were still standing on the sky dome. At the moment, the son of the sun was extremely embarrassed, from the undulating chest to the grey hair, which all told him that he was the end of the crossbow. Previously, Liba Xianshan had overdrawn his realm, and released a fairy-style crazy, almost exhausting his dynamism to the extreme. It's the little emperor, except for a look of yin infrared, he didn't get hurt. Looking at the little emperor who walked towards him step by step, Gongzi Yu unconsciously stepped back. I said, if you make a killing first, then I will return it in the same way. A thick and condensed murderous opportunity emerged from the eyes of the little emperor. He never understood the fear and convergence, even when facing the emperor. The sharp giant horns transformed from Yanli condensed and blocked the retreat of Gongzi Yu from all directions. Gongzi Yu's face was pale, and he saw indifference and contempt from the eyes of the little emperor. You can't kill me, I will just quit. However, the thunder came, and nearly 100 giants stab him without any hesitation. Chapter 47-36. Today's Gongzi Yu has no possibility of escaping. If this hit is hit, he will not even be able to get out of the game. Emperor, save me. Fighting the last trace of strength, Gongzi Yu's panic-stricken voice resounded throughout the heavens. Zhen Wuyang sitting on top of the heavenly court can't calm down. No one knows the character of Xiaodijun better than him. That is a guy who is lawless and has no fear. If he moved his heart, there was almost no room for maneuver. Just as Zhen Wuyang was about to lower the true shadow, the heavens oscillated. Each of the giant horns that blended in the horrible killing intention, while stabbing at the male feather, seemed to be blocked by a transparent barrier, and it was hard to score a half. At the same time, a light red raging force surged up, smashing every giant horn to death. Little Emperor's face froze, and the soft sword in his hand began to tremble. With the light red coming from strength, it is the sun of correction. He stood in front of Gongzi Yu for a moment, and looked at Xiao Emperor with a complicated look. Yes, it's you. For the rest of his life, Gongzi Yu even said something unfavorable. He did nt squint, and the sun stared tightly at the little emperor. Yongzi Yang, I do nt know how you realize the fairy style, but if you want to win the fairy peach by relying only on a fairy style, advise, don't bother. With the sound of his words, nearly 30 Yangxian rushed from Xie, and showed a trend of encirclement, surrounding Xiaodijun and Jian Wushuang in the center. Yongzi Yang, hand over Xiandao, and now quit automatically, I will spare you a life. Young master said softly. Want Xiandao? It's up to you. Xiao Dejuan smiled disdainfully. I don't know why, whenever faced with the little emperor, the anger in the inner heart of the younger son could not be restrained, even a sentence can make him angry. Intercepted on the spot. The son sighed with exclamation. The more than 30 Yang Xian immediately set off, the most extinct Yang Xian interlinked, facing the duo under the pressure. Sword Wushuang moved, releasing the force without reservation. At the same time, the ancestral technique, the realm of heaven, the realm of heaven. With the blessing of the Yangxian realm, the Tianmen Gate, which is the power of the ancestral art, has been completely transformed. Under the guidance of one side, the dense web condensed by the force of 30 Yangxian could not be pressed down for a while, showing a glued state. The little emperor raised the soft sword, and the sword was in full swing. Together, the two broke through the attack of Yangxian. The young man who was far away from the battle circle corrected, and there was a look of surprise in his eyes, and his gaze towards Jian Wushuang began to become vigilant. The move released by Jian Wushuang just now made the young man feel a little deterred. Fight against him, how much do you have the chance to win? He held out his finger and pointed to the sword fighting Wushuang who was fighting. The white robe beside him gazed, and then dimmed again, less than 30%. Is it? Young master slowly raised his mouth. No wonder young master Yang didn't even bring Chen Qing, there was a deeper unpredictable guy around him. Son, let me go, I will bring Xiandao back. Bai Pao Yangxian asked. The young man shook his head and turned to look at the young man Yu. With a tight heart, Gongzi Yu stepped back half a step, and his eyes were alert and disturbed. Now that he is in a situation where the son wants to get him out, it is just a wave of effort. Help me do one thing, it's your reward for my life-saving grace. Gongzi said, suddenly a palm of his heart. Immediately, a light red diffusive force poured into the limbs and corpses of the male son, and the meridian that had dried him up was filled again. Gongzi Yu's condition recovered at a rate visible to the naked eye. Remember, what you did to you just now, you just give it back. I'll wait for your good news. The younger patted his shoulder, and then slowly backed up with his partner. How can Gongzi Yu not know what kind of abacus he is playing, but if he does NT correct him, he will have fallen a long time ago, and where can he go back? Even without the reminder of the son's correction, he would revenge and return all the great horror between life and death. Returning to the pinnacle, Gongzi Yu felt the irresistible vigor in his body, and then stepped out in one step, magnifying the power of terror as if the waves swept forward. A sword flies to a Yangxian, and Jianwu looks at the giant waves coming from the sky. At the next moment, the little emperor came to him quietly, and his back blocked the huge wave of Yanli. Boom! The undifferentiated offensive made Yang Xian, who was a little careless, directly out of the game. Jian Wushuang reacted, and waved his hand to form a barrier to protect the two. The little emperor who had withstood most of the great waves of dynamism turned more red, and his black shirt was mostly broken. Without him, I am afraid that it will be Jian Wushuang himself. Hold on, I will take you away. Looking at the little emperor with signs of fainting, Jian Wushuang sank in his heart, directly hugged his figure, and he was ready to escape. He had already made the worst plan in his heart, reaching for Xiandao with his palm in his arms. Don't, you must not give it. Little emperor looked up at Jian Wushuang, shaking his head slowly and firmly. Then we can see if we can rush out. Jian Wushuang said with a deep voice, the broken tarot Excalibur pointed straight in his hand. The young man Yuga came into the air with a smile, his palms were in the shape of a row of clouds, lowering his majesty. Holding the little emperor with his left arm, he lifted the Tai Luo Excalibur in his right hand. Sword Wushuang took a deep breath and used the absolute sword. In such a situation, the mountains and rivers are exhausted, dying for survival. The most common sword to date has released the most terrifying power. This is a desperate sword that can only be released in desperate circumstances, and there is no upper limit. A sword can be regarded as a million swords, with a broken face. The male Ziyu's full blow even only existed for a moment, and then broke, like a boiling lake, all dissipated. Cough, early, Long ago I knew you could stop this offensive, and I wouldn't do much. With the help of Jian Wushuang, Xiao Dejuan reluctantly said. His body is weak, even if he understands the fairy style, he can't change his physique. Jian Wushuang pursed her lips slightly. It can be blocked now, but it may not be blocked just now. Little Emperor's mouth slightly tilted, and then looked forward. The strength is so disparate, I'm afraid this time, I really want to lose. What if something changes? Jian Wushuang said slowly. It seems to confirm his words. In the next moment, nearly 20 magnificent rainbow shadows rose from the giant river below him, and the majestic momentum was shocking. At the forefront of these rainbow shadows, a huge strange ape roared, and the figure of thousands of feet left a very shocking impression on all Yangxian. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.